Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
We're going for a late night session, James. We're back
We
in
are.
round two, and I think it's past time Big Dog went to bed, but we're both adults now, and
That's
nobody
right.
knows who Big Dog is anymore.
I'm allowed to drink caffeine now, being an adult, so won't rot my brain out, hopefully.
So it doesn't rot your brain out once you turn 18.
Oh, supposedly.
I actually have backed off the caffeine at the moment. I find that I'm better off without it for the most part.
Oh, I don't think old Nanky would be happy with me. I think I'm having a few more than 3 coffees a week. You see his comment on that post?
No, I didn't. Did he slam you for it?
Nah, not me, but he's just like, try and keep it under 2 to 3 a week. And it's like
2 to
I
3
might have
coffees a week? Yeah.
1 a day maybe. Got mates that have 4 or 5 a day, so
Yeah.
yeah, there's worse
Yeah, for
addictions,
sure.
I guess.
I've
Probably
got
better
a
ones.
got a friend who's quite addicted to caffeine, and it's multiple coffees a day, and I'm like, I'll have a decaf, thanks.
I can go without it. Like, it's more just that it's something to do. You know what I mean? Like, you're sitting down, you got something to drink. It's just the action of drinking something. I could not have it for 3 days and be completely fine, but it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I've got another friend who only has coffee as a social drink, so it's we're having a cuppa together. Yeah, let's go get a cuppa, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
for sure.
But otherwise, no need for it. And I'm starting to have that approach on it at the moment. It's like I don't mind having a cuppa, but I can have a hot chocolate or a decaf or something if I just
Yeah, well,
want
that's
to
the
have a
thing.
drink.
Yeah. You got to watch it even with the energy drinks. I know a lot of guys get real big into those. And I was, at one stage, I'd have 4 those little Red Bulls a day, no problem. But it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then it gets to a point where you've had that many of them and it doesn't even do anything for you, And it's like, I just stopped having them, and I might have one every couple of months, you know what I mean? But it's not something that I need to get through a day at work.
Yeah.
I don't need caffeine to get through a day. I don't need, energy drinks and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy. I used to tell people all the time, I'll just drink water. I'm quite happy to drink water. It's good. And then, found just more and more on going, let's have a cuppa together because it's a social thing to do.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So going back the other direction now. But we mentioned briefly before talking about customers and their perceived value that they get from you as a business owner. So if you're talking just a straight mowing job and you're going, okay, I turn up 20 to 22 times a year, or I do $80 per cut, that's the perceived value that the customer then bases their decisions off. That's $1,600 a year, or roughly thereabouts, just in case you're doing the maths on it, per customer. So if you turn around to that customer and you go, hey, I'm going to charge you $120 per cut, all of a sudden they start questioning whether they're getting that same perceived value. But if you go to them and you say, hey, do you want to add some value? Do you want your lawn to be better than the neighbours? Instead of just maintained, do you want it to be greener? We can add some value, and it's going to cost you, an extra $500 a year. All of a sudden, you're making that extra money, and what you're doing is a couple of fertilizer treatments, weed treatments, maybe a grub treatment.
Yeah, 100%. I think treatments are a great way of sort of increasing that value. And with the right people too. It's like I did a bunch of messages to different customers. I'm like, hey, do you want to, broadleaf weed spray? And it's like, even those less higher end sort of, they're not too fussed. They'll still appreciate the fact that their lawn isn't full of weeds, and it doesn't, it makes it easier for you to mow it. It's not looking untidy after 1 week and things like that. So even just from the perspective of saving me time mowing it, because I'm not cutting a foot of clover, is just really nice, so.
It's much nicer to cut grass than clover.
100%.
But I think that's something which some customers won't see value in adding services, but that is a good way for them to feel like they're getting that perceived value when you're bumping them from a $1,600 customer to say $2,500 or $3,000 customer, and you can very easily double them by adding value to what you're doing.
Well, I think the thing is with that too, like a lot of people are like, but people just won't pay it. I think a lot of it depends. Obviously, there's what's realistic for your area. Like, I'm not going to get away with like a standard mow for me. I'm not going to get away with $120 plus GST. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? My area, the property sizes, you're looking at between 50 on the low end to maybe 80, 90 on the higher end, let's say, for your average block.
Yeah.
Majority of them are push mowing. Like if you've got a small stander, I can get away with using it on a couple, but your job time is the same, if not a little bit more with the stander than it is with, say, a 21 or a 30-inch self-propelled.
Yeah.
But the thing is with that, though, like, you know what I mean? If you're providing them with value in what you're doing, you can get that little bit of a higher price. So things even like weed spraying is a good one. So the way I word my quotes is our price is X amount per service, and we include weed spraying in concrete and stonework as required. So that basically covers, let's say I charge $80. Like you do it for say 70, but you charge 80, and then that allows for every say 3 or 4 visits, you spend 10 minutes and a litre or two of glyphosate in the knapsack to run around and just quickly spray those spots.
Yeah.
So it's not something I do every time, but it is something that you do include every now and then just to sort of keep them happy. Yeah.
And you can also start looking at that with jobs that are dreaded jobs like hand weeding.
Yes, for sure.
So one of the things that comes up in our industry is the lawnmower person. He only does lawns. He does not do any gardening at all. And for the customer, that can be a make or break deal. Sometimes they'll
100%.
have two separate people that service their property. One's a gardener and one's a lawnmower.
Well, that was me for a long time. I think the thing is, because of my age, I always probably struggled as well with confidence in getting value for time. Yeah. And I was able to get that mowing because I worked fast and I was, you know what I mean, relatively good at it. So that $50 job, which takes me 25 minutes, there is value in that for the customer. But when it came to the gardening side of things, I didn't have any knowledge. I don't have heaps now, but I'm a little bit better than what I was.
Yeah.
And I also didn't have the right equipment. So it's like, I would never do gardening because I just didn't feel like I could get the money that I wanted to get for it. And I also felt that I wasn't providing value because I just didn't know, So it's like, at least having enough knowledge to say, hey, I don't know. I can tell there's an issue here. I don't know the exact issue, but I know enough to know there's an issue. And I will then liaise with someone who knows a bit more than myself to either get them to come in, quote, to solve the problem, or they can tell me what to do and I can solve the problem. So, you know what I mean? Once you've got that confidence, you're able to quote those jobs and do those things. But I think, I don't know about others, but especially for me, and maybe some people can relate to this, a lot of it's just a confidence issue, really.
Well,
you just don't feel you're going to get what you work.
I find that LMCA and the Aussie Lawn Contractors groups are really good for helping people to get their confidence up in business, because if you don't know something, you go in there, you ask the question. Sometimes you'll have somebody make you feel like a fool because they just want to cut down the tall poppies. But overall, the Facebook groups that are in our community are really good for helping
100%.
you to get your confidence in different jobs.
I've been doing this now. Officially, I've had an ABN for probably 4 years. Start of COVID, I think I got an ABN or just before then. But I've been doing it, say, 6 years part-time. I've never once ever planted anything up until a month or two ago. And I was like, once again, it's like I sort of opened up to new things. Like, let's say hedge trimming was probably the first one, bit of pruning, you know what I mean, general gardening, mulch. I sort of did a little bit more, invested a bit of money into, better equipment. And then it got to a point where it was like, hedge trimming, I feel pretty comfortable, you know what I mean? And I'm happy to, I'm pretty confident quoting hedges, and I know I'm going to be able to do it well. I know I'm somewhat efficient, so I'm able to make the money I want. But I had a request for planting, and I was like, I've never done this before. But I was like, no worries, I'll source the plants. And then went straight home, couple people, hey, this is the situation. What do I do? I've never done it ever. And I'm just like, I feel like the biggest fraud, because it's the way I put myself out there, especially with obviously my website and things like that. You're not going to go on there and say, hey, I've never planted something before. Because you're not going to get any work. You know what I mean? So it's like that balance of, it is fake it till you make it, but you also can't completely BS someone.
Yeah.
So, but having those people there that I've, met in the local community, and then obviously know through Facebook, I know a few guys, and I know, Jeff McPhee. I was like, hey, I know he knows about that. I know he knows the area. What plants would you recommend? What steps should I do? How should I do this? Is there anything I should be aware of? Things like that. And I think, I don't know, I probably pestered him enough to piss him off, but in the end, I understood it, and I got the job done. I put the plants in. I probably could have charged a little more, but I made, enough for my time, and I went back after a month. I gave them a liquid fertilizer, and the plants are doing well. So now I look at that and I'm like, if someone asks me to put plants in, as long as I have the time, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah,
I've got that confidence.
Jobs like that can be really good. I know when people go from maintenance only to softscaping, installing plants and mulch and all those various different aspects that are involved in the landscaping, but softscape only, where they're not actually doing retaining walls, there can be really good margins in it. So it's
for
something
sure.
which will push you from a customer that is $80 a service or $100 a service. You quote to do some planning for them, and you're probably spending $2 or $3 grand, maybe $5.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Before you know it.
Like, that's the thing. Like, you obviously buy your plants from a trade nursery, and I marked them up probably, I don't know, 40%, 30% per plant. And when you're getting 11 plants, they're only $27, $30.
Yeah.
But when that's, rounded to 50, that adds up over 11 plants, plus your time to install the plants, obviously. Yeah.
That's it.
So.
Yeah, so those sorts of services really help. And I know we were talking before, you've taken a bit of a gamble on a piece of equipment that
Yes.
It sounds like it's paid off for you.
Yeah, well, I got a small chipper probably a couple months ago now.
Yeah.
So you'd always do those jobs. I'd take on those, hedge reductions, things like that. And you know what I mean? You got your top handle battery saw, and you're out there and you're cutting it up. You're throwing it in the trailer, you're stomping it down. It's like,
yeah,
man, I've had enough.
So
then you get to the tip, and
you would have spent about $5 grand or $10 grand buying a chipper. Maybe you got a like a Hanser maybe or a Green Mech.
Nah, so I went with the. I was originally going to go for the Tomcat. I'm sure a few people were aware of that one. So it's a drum chipper, Honda motor. Yep. They're about the $9 grand mark. I was pretty much, if they had one in the state, I would have bought it, but they had no stock. So it was a 3-month wait, and I was like, well, this machine is going to be used in winter, obviously, because I'm not working as much with the lawns. So it doesn't make sense for me to wait till August to get a sort of machine I want to use at that time of year. So I ended up passing on that. But I was obviously all over Facebook and Gumtree and things like that. And then I saw one of the BWM Pro. I know a few sort of Melbourne people will know about those ones. So like the yellow one, it's an imported Chinese one. They put a Honda engine on it and stuff. Yep. And I was like, you know what? I'll just offer him something ridiculous. Like, why not? Doesn't hurt. So I offered him $1,500. He wanted $3,000. He's like, yeah, sweet. Went and picked it up, and off we went.
Yeah, nice. So again, it's adding value to customers. So same thing as if you turn up and do a hand weeding job, or you turn up and do a hedge trimming job. The customer, instead of just having their lawn taken care of, they're getting another service taken care of. And a chipper is a great way to add value because it improves your efficiency. So that raises a question about how you charge the customer when you're doing chipping compared to if you're taking the green waste away, right?
100%. 100%.
So if you quote the job to go, okay, I've got to spend 5 minutes through to half an hour pruning some branches off a tree, but it's a 2.5 hour job by the time I load it on my trailer, take it to the tip, pay the tip fees on top of that. So that's going to cost the customer a fair bit. Yeah. Whereas I turn up with the wood chipper, do that 5 minutes, 20 minutes pruning, and the same amount of time putting it through the chipper. And I mean, you could load the chips in straight into your trailer, or you could load them into their green bin, depending on the size of the job. And then you're done.
Well, the thing you watch as well, I found this with the green bins, you get so much of it in there because it sort of breaks it down. So you get so much more, obviously, weight and volume in there. It ends up being so heavy the truck won't lift it. So what I usually do is I'll carry a couple bins with me that I've got, so 240 litre just garbage bins, and I'll chip into those. And then I've got customers and people that will take the mulch, so I'll go drop the bins off there and empty it out, and I just give it to them. I don't charge them for the mulch because it's still a mess sort of service in a sense. And
so you can still charge the same amount. You can say, well, this is a 20 minutes work on the site plus the amount of time it takes to go away. So it's a 2.5 hour job plus tip fees. I'm going to charge $500 for that job, right? Maybe more.
Yeah.
You can still charge customer $500, but then you're doing 20 minutes on site. You might take another 20 minutes if you're taking the mulch over to somebody else's site maybe. Yeah. But you're cutting your time down massively.
Well, that's the thing, and cutting out, I know a lot of people, and I've got, mates in different sort of suburbs, and the prices they pay at the tip are like, quarter or half what I'd be paying. Because, a trailer for me, which is an 8x5 high side, is usually around that 140, 150 mark.
Yeah.
And some people might be paying $20, $40, $50. So if you're paying $40, you know what I mean, and you're still charging 200, 250 for that trailer, it's not so bad. But when I'm charging 200 or 250 plus I'm paying 150 and there's 20 minutes, 30 minutes to drive there, 30 minutes to unload it. And then being that I work on weekends, the tip isn't open on weekends. And if I need that, back of the trailer on Sunday to put the skag in and go do some lawns, I just don't have that versatility. Whereas I get home with the chipper and the mulch, I just take the bins out, put them down the side of the house, chipper goes out. And then when I've filled up all the bins, I take them all down to the job and I spread the mulch. So even just little things like that, it's not even the extra money I earn, it just makes it easier to do the work and makes it a lot more enjoyable. I think that's another thing that is really sort of contributing factor with that more than just the money.
Let's talk about the money for a bit, because I think this is an interesting topic. And a lot of people have asked the question. A lot of people haven't actually made the decision to buy a chipper and see whether they benefit from it or not. So one of the things I've found is that a lot of the time, if I'm doing a job which includes chipping, I can use the mulch on the same property. So I can put it back on their garden beds. So I could potentially charge them to take the chip away and then charge them to bring some wood chip in and put it on their garden beds, right?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people have been asking about which brand of battery tool to buy, and I don't like to recommend one brand of battery for everyone or every situation. Dealer support and access to parts and service all play a big role in that decision. Some brands have better tools for specific needs or each product category. I've been using a variety of brands, and I endeavour to provide unbiased interviews on Aussie Lawn Stars with as many of those product brands as possible. I reached out to Ego Power Plus through the podcast because of how Barry supports the industry and Ego owners. Barry has impressed me with his loyalty to customers in providing support and listening to the needs of the industry, which has resulted in a full lineup of new commercial tools landing in Australia over the last 12 months that has positioned Ego as a leader in the commercial tool space for outdoor power equipment. Visit egopowerplus.com.au to see if they have the tools you need today.
This goes back to what we were talking about, perceived value. Does the customer start looking at that if you're charging them to take the chips away and bring chips in?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, hang on a minute, we're getting duped here.
The thing is as well, I think, is the quality of the chips. Like if you're chipping palms, things like that, you're not going to be getting that quality.
True.
So
that does come into that, doesn't it?
You're not going to be able to compare the quality of just rough mulch to, say, quarter pine or something like that.
Definitely not.
So it depends on the quality of the customer and the type of landscape they have. If they're going for that sort of more rugged native bushland, you can get away with it. Or if it's a, say, commercial site or something like that, they're happy to take it. But usually what I'll end up doing is most jobs I just charge it as green waste.
Yep.
But the thing is I'm not charging, like, let's say you go to a job, say you're pulling out a smallish lemon tree. Realistically, that's going to be half a trailer. That's going to be half an hour to cut it down, 20 minutes to load it up, half-hour drive to the tip, say 20-minute drive to the tip, 20 minutes to unload, $60 at the tip. I might say charge $200 to cut the tree down and $100 for the waste. Whereas in reality, you'd probably charge $150, $200 if you're going to the tip.
Yeah.
So I might come in a little cheaper, but to me, it's like I go there, I cut it down in 20 minutes, I chip it in 10 minutes, and then I just go home with half a bin, which stays at home till I fill the full bin.
Yep.
So it works okay for me, and I'm able to hit that hourly rate that I want to make.
Yeah.
But it's gone to a point, especially now being in spring, I sort of feel like now I'm sort of just charging green waste as green waste. I'm charging just what the full price would be, because it's like I have invested that money and that is my, you know what I mean, benefit. Like I'm going to have to replace this machine. I'm going to have to maintain this machine. So especially with these smaller jobs, I think it's important that you do charge that. I think if, let's say we're going to do, a full trailer load or whatever, instead of say charging for say 3 trailer loads at $200 each, you might only charge say 300 instead of 600, but you're going to get your whole day's labor. But when you're doing these little jobs, it's important not to just charge $20 or $50. I should be charging $150, $200. So
Yeah, and this comes into it, right? If your normal run includes carrying your skag around or a bunch of lawn mowing tools, and then you're going, okay, I'm going to do a job with a chipper,
yep,
I've got to charge the customer a minimum rate to get the chipper out because I do have to pack my other tools away, come to their job
yes,
chipper, and factor that in when I'm quoting their job. So I need to treat it not the same as if I was taking their green waste away, just loading it in the trailer and paying tip fees and the time consuming aspect of that. But I need to factor in the time consuming aspect of changing tools over and doing a job with the chipper that is going to go, this covers my minimum rate to get the chipper out to actually change function so that it's valuable for me when I'm helping this customer achieve something that's outside of the scope of their normal lawn mowing or whatever it is.
a lot of the work I've done with that machine has been more. They're a different group of customers, so I've picked up work. Say they'll have a mowing guy, but I'll do the plants or I'll do the hedges or I'll give it
Yeah.
a couple year old good trim and chip everything. But
Yeah.
with that machine, when it goes out, I'm using it all day. Like I'm not taking it to a small job or things like that. What I'd usually do if, let's say, there's a small job on a mowing one, I just take the branches home with me and ship them at home. So I'm not going to take it out for a job unless I'm going to use it for that day, sort of thing. And I might use it for half a day and then switch when I get home. But I might be doing 2 jobs that day, so it works okay in that sense. But I think it's more just the point of if people in my area are charging $700 for a job including green waste, and I'm coming in at, let's say, I don't know, 400, 500, I can at least be charging 600. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've spent that extra money that most people in the area, let's say, haven't.
Yeah.
So that does give me that competitive advantage. So I think I need to sort of, you know what I mean? Like, I think I have an issue where I look at jobs and I think that's easy for me to do.
Yes.
So I don't see that extra value in it. But what you've got to consider is it's easy for me to do because I work hard. I like doing this sort of work. I have the technical knowledge. I have the equipment. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have the knowledge. They have the equipment. You know what I mean? Like that 10-minute job for you is half a week in for them or whatever, So you can't look at it through what you think it's worth. You got to look at it through what it is actually worth. And that's a slow thing I'm, progressing with and trying to sort of improve on.
Yeah, so as a business, that's one of the factors that starts to come into it, right? Is saying, okay, what's the customer look at this job as being worth to them, and then
well, that's it.
The other side of that supply and demand aspect of that is when you're solo, you're not really looking at the full cost to you. When you're paying an employee to do a job like this, you're going, okay, I've got to pull the employee from a different type of job, send them out to this particular type of customer. How much is that worth to me? I need that employee to be hitting, $700 a day, what we were mentioning before.
Yeah.
So how do I make sure that they're doing that if I pull them from one job and off to another job that might only be an hour or two, but I've still got to make sure they're hitting the point where that's going to make sure the employee's got enough money to get paid, all my expenses getting paid, and I'm still making money. Well,
that's the thing too. I think like a lot of those sort of jobs, I'm willing to travel a bit further. Like I might travel 20, 30 minutes and it's like you might get there and let's say it's, you're doing an ornamental pair reduction for argument's sake, and it's say a couple $500, $600. It might take you 2 to 3 hours, but I've then got to drive home. I'm going to then have to take the mulch on a separate occasion to a job or somewhere to dispose of it.
That's right.
You need to be hitting that, like ideally I'd say, $200 an hour would be good for that sort of work. And that is possible because there is perceived value there because you're in that niche between a gardener and an arborist. You're in that gap.
Yeah.
If you can find work in that gap, you know what I mean? No arborist is going to come to that job for $600 with 3 guys. Even though it might only take them an hour, they're just not going to do it.
That's
so it's like if you can find those niches and work in with it, then you can be profitable. So I think a big thing is for me trying to find that niche and provide that value and charge what it's really worth. Because, I struggle with that and I'm like, is that fair? Like, that's a lot of money for someone, you know what I mean? $600 for what, to be honest, isn't really that hard for me to do in a couple of hours.
And this is where the hand weeding comes in all the time because customers perceive value for hand weeding. A lot of the time that's only worth $20 an hour.
Because they can do it. They don't need anything. It's just, anyone can do it.
Well, this is where you got to push back on a customer and go, okay, their perceived value at $25 an hour, they should do it themselves.
That's
Because
exactly right.
I'm not doing that. If you can't do it yourself, then sorry, but that's going to cost a minimum of, whatever it is worth for me to turn up and do the hand weeding. If I fit it in with my existing run, then it's more efficient than if I have to drop all of the other tools off to do the hand weeding job. So I can save some efficiencies there, but I still need to be making the same sort of money on that hand weeding job as what it's worth for me to doing any other job.
The thing you can see with that too, I think, is the money you make doing that hand weeding, regardless whether that equipment's being used or not, you still own it. You still need to hypothetically charge for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, you can't be just really discounting that hourly rate. So yeah.
Yeah, if you hire a lawyer and then you get them to go and do some hand weeding, they're not going to do it for $20 an hour because they can go back and do law.
Exactly right.
And
exactly
if you hire an expert that's charging everything else out that they do at $100 an hour or $120 an hour or $200 an hour, then you can't expect them to go, oh, well, I'm not using my chainsaw or my lawnmower, so I'm going to do this one for free.
Well, that's the thing I think too. Like you go and you mow lawn, the lawn's mowed, you're done. So if you make it, let's say 120 per hour on that with your travel, you might say charge out, like you quote the job at say 200 for the chipper, but by the time you drive home, take the chipper out, take the mulch away, you work it down to that 120. That's fine to be at that 120, but I think there's a lot of extra things that I don't consider with the chipper, which is something I need to get a bit better with, like the tip. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I would say comes back to Mark Ladaway's business model when you start looking at these smaller, inefficient jobs. You go, okay, if Mark Ladaway's doing a lawn, it's probably less than 15 minutes. But he's not going to do it for $5 because it's 15.
No, that's right.
He's going to do it for $80.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to have those minimums. Like that's like if you were charging it, let's say. That's the problem with when people ask you for hourly rates, because there might be like even NDIS, let's say, for example, at $55 an hour, and this job is going to take me 15 minutes. It's just not realistic, But then it's like, let's be honest, you're going to get someone who's going to say, yeah, it's a 2-hour job or 1 hour job. And it's like they might make it take 1 hour, but the value that's being provided there is the same.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important factor. And it's like, you're not telling them an hourly rate because you don't want them to catch on to how you're pulling one over on them. You can't compare hourly rates because everyone works differently, everyone's set up differently, everyone's got different experience. It's just not something you can compare.
This is why NDIS is an interesting beast, because most people that I've talked to have a moral dilemma about charging NDIS more than what NDIS are willing to pay.
Yeah.
And I've raised this point with somebody else just yesterday. If you look at the NDIS rate, 50, what do you say it was, 55?
I had a call from someone who wanted me to quote for an NDIS participant. I think it was 55.20, maybe, including GST, which is,
So it has gone up a little bit. I think when I first looked at it, it was $47 or something.
Yeah, it was around that 45 mark, maybe, I think, something like that, yeah.
Right. But the NDIS number there, if you have a look at what they allow for a job that you are going, it's only going to take me half an hour to do, they probably have an allowance on that job that they have already gone, this is what it's worth. It's worth 2 hours or 2.5 or 3 hours. And you're going, okay, if I'm charging them for half an hour, that's not like maybe $26.30, right? It's not what they've allowed for the job. So when you look at the hourly rate, what you need to start doing, and not you specifically, but what I believe is the correct way to look at this, is that's not actually an hourly number, that is a billing unit.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Now I think about it, because I believe the allowed time was it maybe 2 hours? So that's $110.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look at their billing units, they've got billing units for providers and they've got billing units for service providers. So if you're talking about the NDIS provider, you've got a company there that is purely administrative, and all they're doing is charging NDIS and then getting a bill from you and paying it. So they're not going to do their job for nothing. They get in there, they do the administrative side of it, and they charge NDIS more than what you're paying. Whereas plenty of times we will end up working for NDIS directly, and we think we can only charge them for an hourly rate, when actually we can charge them for time to drive as well as other aspects of the job that allow for some administrative side of things. And you go, okay, the billing units that they've allowed for that job allow for a bunch of different things, not just for the fact that it takes you 20 minutes to do a job with the SCAG when somebody else takes an hour and a half to do it with the Pushmo.
Exactly right. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, she called me. I knew that was something. I had a chat about that. I'm like, oh, look, I'm happy to have a look at it and quote you on, a price for what it needs. I am competitive, but I can't work $55 an hour. And she's like, yeah, no, that's fine. And it's passed on. And I'm not desperate for the work. It wasn't a really big, appealing job by any means. So, yeah, but that's definitely good to know, because I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways people will look at it, but a lot of people can't get their head around this idea that that's a billing unit rather than it is strictly an hourly rate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I find that rather frustrating, because I think NDIS have shot themselves in the foot with that, labelling it as an hourly rate. And
people charging for 5 hours for an hour's work, so.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't know any different.
Yeah. But, the other aspect there is that often what is perceived is that NDIS is the only payment you can get for doing that job for a customer, whereas often the NDIS payment is meant to be a supplement, not the full payment for a job. So a customer of NDIS might be going, all right, I can't do the lawns myself. NDIS will give me a supplement to look after my yard. It's not expected that NDIS makes the full payment. It's expected that the customer gets that supplement.
Makes up the difference.
Makes up the difference. So that is another way of looking at it, going to the customer and going, you know what, NDIS pays for a third or a half or whatever it is of the job to be done, and I'm going to charge the full amount. Well,
I've got customers, and I have had customers in the past that have been on home care and things like that, but it's always been, I've dealt with the customer and they've been reimbursed.
Yes.
I've no issue working through that sort of system, but this hourly rate sort of thing, it just doesn't really mesh. I've got a few properties as well that are like, they're disability homes, like full-time care houses.
Yeah.
But they're a quoted fixed price. They're not hourly rate or anything, so no issue with those.
Yeah. And I've seen that numerous times where I'm working for a provider rather than for NDIS directly. And I've also done it with DVA, where I'm working for the customer rather than working for DVA.
Yep.
And
well, that's the thing with those properties. I work for a contractor who has the contract for Australia, and I'm the contractor for
so you're
my region. Yeah,
to the main contractor.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a good way to get business
for sure. Yeah.
And it's kind of a sure thing when you're subcontracting to a main contractor in a situation like that. Once they're happy with what you're doing, then it's an easy way for you to run your business. You don't have to put a lot of effort into chase marketing. You've got repeat business there, and they will probably send you more work as you go. Once they trust you too, they'll go, all right, we're bringing on more jobs. Can you take them on?
Yeah, so I've got 3 sites through them, but the way they work is they, I believe, get contracts with these large establishments, and then they contract them out. But the company themselves, they don't do the actual work. They just manage the contract and do all that. So it's not like you're working for a mate who mows this vacant block, and at any time they can say, oh, we'll cut costs and do it ourselves, because they don't do it themselves. You know what I mean? So
that's right.
Yeah, it works out quite well from my experience so far.
Are you thinking of leaving your job to start a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie Lawn Stars shares stories, lessons, and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient, and sustainable business. Got questions or want more information? Contact Aussie Lawn Stars at iCloud.com or reach out to Gary Ashton on Facebook or Messenger for personal help. But beware, your question may end up in a podcast episode. For business coaching that ensures the right mindset and decision-making approach, check out Think Tank Coaching. Their website is https://thinktankcoaching.com.au. They've been instrumental in helping me and can guide you towards achieving your business goals. You can also email them at thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. Need to set up best practices for bookkeeping, accounting and business structure? Contact Adrian from Prosper Financial at 02 4977 3363. And don't forget to join Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups. Great supportive communities focused on our industry.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.